We've got a lot of videos and a lot of streams coming up over the next few days as we wrap up Olympic coverage and we watch the NFL preseason. So be sure that you turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live. And now, on with our feature presentation. There are many, and I truly mean many crazy stories about this man right here, running back Duane Thomas. Think of him as the original Antonio Brown, if you will, minus the legal issues. A super talented player who is remembered today more for his antics than his on-the-field performance. Thomas was one of a kind. As for every great performance he had on the field, he had about a million other stories off the field. On the field, you had his 1970 season, where he was called into duty following some injuries and immediately became one of the top runners in the NFL, finishing second in the voting for AP Offensive Rookie of the Year. You had his 1971 season, where he led the NFL with 11 rushing touchdowns and guided Dallas to their first Super Bowl win in franchise history, and his incredible performance at Super Bowl VI, where he had over 100 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown, and absolutely should have been named the MVP of the game. And then, off the field, you had his failed trade to the New England Patriots that got called off 1 week after it happened, his constant feuds, his release from Washington in 1974, where he choked out one of his coaches, only to be re-signed by the team a few days later, despite literally committing assault, his 1971 media boycott, where he refused to talk to the press, his 1972 season where he refused to play for the San Diego Chargers, his preseason incident during one game in 1973, where he intentionally stood the wrong way while the national anthem was being played, and a whole slew of other things. Basically, every story that you've heard about Duane Thomas is probably true. He's one of those guys where nothing, and I truly mean nothing, is beyond the realm of possibility. However, here's one story regarding Thomas that you might not know about that deserves a deep dive more than half a century later in the wake of his passing. Because when Duane Thomas first joined Washington in the 1973 season, he was almost assigned a very different jersey number than the one he ended up getting. And the story behind it involves deception at its finest, and involves one of the best running backs in the sport being outright lied to by the organization. Because more than half a century later, this is the story behind one of the strangest uniform controversies in NFL history, and the time that Duane Thomas was lied to. Before I talk about the actual controversy in question, and just how Washington lied to Thomas this entire time, souring their relationship with him from the start, we need some context to understand how Duane Thomas even got to Washington in the first place. And in all honesty, this part could be 2 hours long, and I still wouldn't have enough time to cover all the details. But long story short, after the Cowboys traded Thomas to the Chargers in 1972, Thomas didn't report to the organization, so he was suspended by the team for the entire season, meaning that 1 year after leading the league in rushing touchdowns and playing like arguably the best player in the Super Bowl, Thomas wasn't even playing a single game in the league. The Chargers, understandably fed up with him and wanting to get something for him, traded him to Washington the following year in 1973, with Washington giving up a first-round pick to acquire his services, back in a time when George Allen was running the show and didn't care whatsoever about draft picks and their value. So in the summer of 1973, Duane Thomas found himself on Dallas's biggest rival, finding himself in the nation's capital with Washington. With that in mind, the first order of business for Thomas was to figure out what jersey number he was going to wear. What was the number that he would don on the field and that people would associate him with? And for Thomas, the choice was rather obvious. He wanted to wear the number that he wore in Dallas, and the number that you've been seeing him wear this entire time. He wanted to wear the number 33 jersey. And this made sense for a ton of reasons, not the least of which being that no one on Washington's roster at the time was wearing that number. Players are very particular about their number, and when it came to Thomas, he had worn that number throughout his entire career. He wore that number at West Texas A&M in college, where he was a star and scored 10 touchdowns during his final season. He wore that number with the Cowboys, where he led the NFL in rushing touchdowns and won a Super Bowl. And he wanted to wear that number at his next stop in Washington, seeing as he had worn that number his whole life and was good under that number, to the point where maybe if you associated the number 33 with any football player back then, it might have been Duane Thomas. However, there was just one small problem with Thomas's request. There was just one teeny tiny problem that was preventing Thomas from getting that number that he had worn throughout his entire career. And that was the fact that Washington had retired the number in honor of this man right here. Because this man right here is Sammy Baugh, and he's widely regarded as the greatest quarterback in NFL history prior to the NFL-AAFC merger. Slinging Sammy was one of the greatest to ever do it, and was so good that he was named onto the NFL's 100th anniversary team in 2019, making him one of just 2 quarterbacks to be named to the team, despite playing exclusively in the pre-merger era. Baugh led the NFL in passing yards 4 times. He led the NFL in passing touchdowns twice. He led the NFL in completion percentage a whopping 8 times, including 5 straight seasons from 1945 to 1949. He was named onto the All-1940s team and the 75th anniversary team, and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1963 for the inaugural class. Thanks to Baugh under center, Washington won 2 NFL championships and made it to the title game 5 times. And after Baugh retired, owner George Preston Marshall, who absolutely loved Baugh, even so much as asking him to become the next head coach in 1953, made it clear that no one would ever wear the number 33 jersey again as long as he was around, making it the first retired jersey in franchise history. The number 33 jersey would forever be immortalized and would forever be associated with this man right here, slinging Sammy Baugh. So with that in mind, because the number was retired by the team in honor of this man right here, Duane Thomas would be unable to wear the number 33 jersey, and would be stuck wearing the number 47 jersey. Alright, seems like a non-story so far, right? Player wants to wear a number, and he can't wear it because the team retired it. And it's been retired for over 20 years now. And if that's what happened, where this man right here, Duane Thomas, wanted to wear a number and was told no by the team, then you'd probably be right in the sense that this wouldn't be too much of a story. Heck, on the Duane Thomas scale of crazy stories, this doesn't even make a blip on the radar, as there would be at least 200 or crazier stories than this one. However, that's not what happened, because when Thomas met with the team and met with equipment manager Tommy McVean, instead of outright rejecting Thomas's request to wear the number 33 jersey due to club policy, McVean told Thomas that it's entirely up to Sammy Baugh. McVean and the organization knew how important number 33 was to Thomas, but also knew how important it was to Baugh as in the legacy of the team. So McVean and the organization made a deal with Thomas. They would call up Sammy Baugh and ask his thoughts on unretiring the jersey number. If Thomas got Baugh's blessing to wear the number 33 jersey, like he wore in college and wore in Dallas, then Thomas would be able to wear the number 33 jersey. And unfortunately for Thomas, the answer was a resounding no from Sammy Baugh. I mean, it makes a ton of sense as to why Baugh would reject wanting Thomas to wear the number 33 jersey. It could tarnish the number forever. He earned the right to have that number retired, and to have someone else wear it, especially a loose cannon like Thomas who just got there and hadn't done anything with the team thus far, and especially a former Cowboy, would just be wrong. What's the point of retired numbers if players can just request it to be unretired? So when Washington called up Baugh, and Baugh did not give Thomas his blessing to wear the number 33 jersey, Washington came back to Thomas and said, well, we tried everything we could, but Sammy Baugh doesn't want you to wear the number, so you're getting the number 47 jersey. Stinks for Thomas, but that's the way it went. Except that was a complete lie. Everything I just said? Yeah, that was complete BS. Washington faked their phone call to Sammy Baugh. Turns out, Washington never actually called up Sammy Baugh in all of this. Because once Baugh got wind of the fact, through a third party, that Thomas wanted to wear the number 33 jersey, Ball's response was, "Go for it. I've got no problem with it." Seriously, Washington and everyone involved in this decision lied to Duane Thomas's face by telling him that Sammy Baugh didn't want him to wear the number 33 jersey, and that's the reason it would remain retired, while Baugh had no issue whatsoever with Thomas wearing the number, and was confused as to why the organization would blame him for the decision while having nothing to do with it, and while granting Thomas permission if he had his way. Because when Sammy Baugh was talking about this man right here in Duane Thomas, he said, "I was wondering when they were going to run out of numbers and put my old one to use. I'd be happy to see someone else wear it." Yeah, that's a bit of a plot twist. Sammy Baugh was flat out telling Duane Thomas, "If you want to wear my number, go for it," and was flat out telling the team to make Thomas happy by unretiring the number. Said Baugh, "If they would contact me, I'd tell them, go ahead. It's my pleasure. If someone really wanted to wear it, and I would be helping him in some way, then give him the number. It won't make a player a good player, nor will it make him a bad player. It's just a number." Baugh had no real attachment to the number 33, and seeing as there was nothing whatsoever stopping Washington from issuing that number to Thomas, Baugh saw no reason why Thomas couldn't wear his old number. So, just to recap where we are in our crazy story right now, Duane Thomas wants to wear the number 33 jersey. Washington says that they'll call up Sammy Baugh to see if he's okay with giving him the retired number. Washington lies to Thomas and says that Baugh is not okay with it and that Thomas will be stuck with a number 47 jersey, while Baugh eventually gets wind of this and says that he's more than fine giving up that number to Thomas, and that Washington never actually called him. Got all that? And this is clearly one of those things where if Washington just told Thomas straight up, "Hey, we retired that number a while ago, Sammy Baugh is really important to us, and we don't reissue retired numbers, especially seeing as this is the only number that we've ever retired in team history, so you'll need to pick a different one," then okay. It's the fact that Washington skirted around the issue and just flat out lied to Thomas and made it seem like Sammy Baugh was the villain, when in reality, he couldn't care less and would have actually supported someone else wearing his jersey number, especially a player as talented as Duane Thomas. Washington ended up ticking off the player who wanted the jersey number and the player who had the jersey number simultaneously. That is genuinely impressive how you can botch the situation that badly. And Thomas didn't comment on the issue because he never spoke to the press, as he was on a media boycott, which the press understandably hated him for. But based on everything we know about Thomas and his hot head, oh, you bet that when he found out the news that his new team had lied to his face, didn't follow through on their promise to call up Baugh, and withheld his jersey number from him, especially since it had a lot of value, that he was ticked off, and rightfully so. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure that one out. As for the men who played for these two teams behind me right here, Duane Thomas played 2 seasons in Washington, playing there in 1973 and 1974. And in 1974, he even led the team in rushing touchdowns. Both seasons he was in Washington, he wore the number 47 jersey. So the number 33 jersey was retired for Sammy Baugh, which again, is entirely their right, just the way they went about it was very bizarre and deceiving. To this day, no one has worn the number 33 jersey since Sammy Baugh's retirement, as that number has been retired for more than 70 years now. And in case you're wondering what this helmet is behind me right here, well, this one is autographed by none other than Duane Thomas himself, an absolute legend in every sense of the word, and it feels fitting to have this helmet up top, especially in light of his passing way too soon. So what's the moral of the story involving this man right here? Lying is wrong. You should not lie. If you're going to let someone down, then just let them down straight up and be honest with them, because the truth will eventually come out, and it will not be pretty. Washington had every right to permanently retire the number 33 jersey and not reissue it, especially to someone like Duane Thomas. This was not a Jerry Rice with the Seahawks, or a J.J. Watt with the Cardinals, or a Peyton Manning with the Broncos situation by any stretch of the imagination, especially considering Thomas's prior history. But for them to do this entire charade and song and dance, and completely lie to Thomas by shifting the blame onto Baugh without even contacting Baugh, and when Ball would have given an entirely different answer, and maybe the answer that Washington wouldn't have wanted to hear? That's just wrong on so many levels. Duane Thomas deserved better than that. And Duane Thomas, for as much of a character as he was a heck of a running back that has more than etched his place in NFL history. There won't ever be another running back like Duane Thomas again. I can promise you that much. Rest in peace to one of the most unique characters in NFL history. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.